My name is Sophia Smith, and I'm 34 years old. Tell me, have you ever been erased from your own family's story? Last week, at my father's retirement gala, the grand finale of his 30-year career as headmaster of one of the most prestigious schools in the state, I was escorted away from the VIP table, right in front of 200 guests. Not because I caused a scene, not because I was late, but because being an elementary school teacher was, apparently, an embarrassment to the Smith family. Meanwhile, my father's stepdaughter, Lila Langford, a corporate attorney, sat proudly in my chair, taking my place. And the position that was once promised to me on the $6 million Smith Scholars Foundation. I stood there shaking, humiliated beyond words. But what happened next? When my quiet, humble husband, Ethan Cole, rose from his seat and walked toward that microphone, the entire ballroom fell silent. In less than 60 seconds, his revelation changed everything. My father's face, the gasp of the crowd, and my stepmother's champagne glass shattering against the marble floor. I will never forget that moment. If you're watching this, take a second to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. Have you ever been rejected by your own family for not being successful enough? Now then, let me take you back to that night. The crystal ballroom at the Riverside Grand Hotel shimmered with self-importance. Golden light poured from chandeliers, dancing across ivory linen tablecloths and centerpieces of white orchids. Each bouquet probably cost more than my entire week's groceries. This wasn't just a retirement party. It was the farewell celebration for Dr. Gregory Smith, and he made sure every influential name in education was there to witness it. My husband, Ethan Cole, and I arrived 15 minutes late, thanks to an unexpected traffic jam on the interstate. I slowed my steps, adjusting the hem of my navy blue dress, the nicest one I owned, bought 3 years ago for a teaching award ceremony. Ethan looked effortlessly handsome in his simple black suit, though I noticed he was checking his phone a little more often than usual. "Everything okay?" I whispered as we stepped into the ballroom. "Just some last-minute details," he said softly, squeezing my hand. "Nothing to worry about." The room buzzed with chatter, over 200 guests, board members, school principals, major donors, even reporters from the State Education Journal. A photographer hovered near the stage beneath a massive banner that read, "Congratulations, Dr. Gregory Smith, 30 years of excellence in education." My father stood near the entrance, dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my teaching salary. Beside him sparkled Victoria Langford Smith, his wife of 4 years, in a gold sequined gown, her diamond necklace catching the light with every rehearsed laugh. They looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. "Ah, you made it," my father boomed when he spotted us, but his smile never reached his eyes. "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't miss your big night." Victoria's gaze swept over my navy dress, and that faint, practiced smile faltered, just enough for me to see the disappointment she tried to hide. "It's good you made it," my father said smoothly. "Lila has been here for over an hour, already networking with the board members." Lila Langford, Victoria's daughter, the successful one. "The traffic was on me," I offered quietly. "No excuse, really," Victoria's voice cut in like silk. "Let's get you to your table, dear." As we moved through the crowd, I noticed a local news crew setting up cameras near the stage. Whatever announcement my father planned tonight, he wanted it documented. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, unreadable. Something felt different tonight. The way Victoria kept smiling too long, the way my father avoided my eyes, and the way Ethan held his phone, tight, close, like he was waiting for something. I just didn't know. I was about to be erased from my own family's story. At the VIP table, the name cards glittered like tiny verdicts. I scanned them once, then twice, then a third time, my stomach sinking lower with each pass. Mr. Gregory Smith, Victoria Langford Smith, Lila Langford, Daniel Brennan, major donors, board members, but no Sophia Smith. There must be some kind of mistake, I said softly, trying to keep my voice even. Victoria appeared beside me, her smile sharp as crystal. Oh, didn't Gregory tell you? We had to make a few last-minute adjustments. Space was limited, you understand. I glanced at the table. 8 chairs, 7 name cards, 1 empty seat. Right beside Lila Langford, her manicured hand resting gracefully on the chair as she laughed with Daniel Brennan, the chairman of the Smith Scholars Foundation. But I'm his daughter, I whispered. Of course you are, dear, Victoria replied smoothly. You'll be at table 12, right over there. She gestured toward the back of the ballroom, half hidden behind a decorative column, next to the teachers from the district. Isn't that perfect? You'll have so much in common to talk about. Beside me, Ethan's jaw tightened. This is her father's retirement dinner, he said quietly. And we're so glad you both could make it, Victoria replied without missing a beat, turning away before I could answer. Lila, darling, tell Mr. Brennan about your latest case, she said sweetly. Lila looked up, flashing that perfectly practiced smile. Oh, Sophia, I didn't see you there. Her eyes flicked down, lingering just long enough on my 3-year-old navy dress. Are you comfortable back there? Victoria's voice carried easily across the table. She was telling everyone how Lila had just been promoted, the youngest senior associate in her firm's history. Every word was perfectly placed, a dagger wrapped in politeness. I stood there, staring at the name cards, watching my own name disappear from that table, like it was some kind of prophecy. Then my father approached, adjusting his tie as if nothing had happened. Dad, I whispered. Why am I not sitting with you? He shifted, uncomfortable. Victoria thought it might be better for networking, he said. If Lila connects with the right people, it could help the foundation. You understand, right? It's just business. Just business. My father had turned erasing me into a corporate decision. Beside me, Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but unshakable. And exactly where is Sophia supposed to sit? Table 12 will be fine, my father replied, still avoiding my eyes. There are plenty of distinguished educators there. Distinguished educators. Code for not important enough to sit at the front. Lila's laughter rang out, clear and effortless, as she leaned toward Daniel Brennan, discussing corporate grants and board funding. She was sitting in my chair, living my moment, and everyone seemed perfectly fine with it. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and something flickered across his face. Was that satisfaction? Come on, I whispered, tugging at his hand. Let's just go to table 12. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been demoted within my own family's hierarchy. Table 12 wasn't a seat. It was exile. As we made our way across the ballroom, Victoria's voice carried over the classical music, each word perfectly aimed for maximum impact. This is Lila, my daughter, she announced to a cluster of donors. Senior attorney at Henderson and Combe Law Group. She just won a multi-million-dollar case for the Peterson Foundation. A pause, then lightly, almost as an afterthought. And that's Sophia, Robert's daughter, heading toward the back. She teaches elementary school at Lakeside Public. The way she said public school, it sounded like a diagnosis. Ethan's hand found mine under the polyester tablecloth of table 12, so far removed from the silk and linen of the VIPs. Around us sat 5 other teachers, each in their best clothes, each wearing the same polite discomfort, like we all knew exactly what kind of seats we'd been given tonight. "3rd grade, right?" asked Mrs. Lopez, a middle school math teacher. "I heard you won Teacher of the Year last year." "I did," I said quietly, forcing a smile. "But tonight, that feels like a lifetime ago." "Wonderful," Mrs. Lopez said kindly, but we both heard the truth behind her words. Wonderful doesn't get you a VIP seat. Across the ballroom, Lila's confident voice rose above the music. She was discussing international tax law with someone from the mayor's office, each sentence polished, precise, like she'd been rehearsing her success for years. Every few minutes, Victoria gestured toward her daughter, making sure everyone within earshot knew, "That's my child, the successful one." My father moved from group to group, and I started counting. 12 introductions, 15 minutes, all for Lila. He passed our table twice, and never stopped. Ethan's hand tightened around mine. His phone lit up again. A message flashed. "Confirmed. Ready when you are." "What's that?" I whispered. "Just work," he said. But there was something in his tone I couldn't read. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "I'm fine." He wasn't lying, but he wasn't calm either. His brown eyes met mine, steady, warm. And for a moment, I felt anchored, even here, even now. Then another burst of laughter echoed from the VIP table, bright, polished, practiced. The sound of people who would never know what it feels like to be invisible. From across the room, I could hear Victoria talking to someone about Lila's Harvard law degree, loud enough for our entire corner to hear. "She's accomplished so much," she said proudly. "It takes real ambition to reach those heights. Not everyone has that kind of drive. Certainly not teachers who spend their days teaching 8-year-olds to read." Her words floated through the ballroom like perfume laced with poison. Mrs. Lopez leaned closer, whispering softly, "Family can be complicated." I nodded, staring across the room. My father was smiling at Lila as she showed him something on her phone, probably her latest press feature. Meanwhile, in my desk drawer back at Lakeside Elementary, I had 28 handmade thank you cards from my students. But those didn't open doors. They didn't make headlines. They didn't earn you a seat at the VIP table. Ethan was typing something quickly on his phone, his brow tight. "Hey," I murmured. "Whatever you're doing, don't. It's not worth it." He kissed my temple. "You're always worth it," he said quietly. Then, the lights dimmed. My father stepped onto the stage, tapping the microphone with the same authority I grew up admiring. 200 faces turned toward him. The photographer stepped closer, ready for the perfect shot. "Thank you all for being here tonight," my father began, his voice steady, practiced. The voice of the headmaster I once wanted to be proud of me. "As I close this chapter of my career," he continued, "I am deeply grateful." He began with the usual list of thank yous: the school board, fellow principals, major sponsors. Then came the personal part. My heartbeat quickened. "I've been blessed with a wonderful family," he said, gesturing toward the VIP table. "My beautiful wife, Victoria, who's been my rock for the past 4 years. And tonight, I'm especially proud to have Lila Langford here, Victoria's daughter, whom I've come to love as my own." The words hit like ice water. Lila was recently promoted to senior associate at Henderson and Comedy Law Group, the youngest in the firm's history. Harvard Law, summa cum laude. She represents everything education should aspire to produce: ambition, excellence, and the drive to reach the very top. Thunderous applause followed. Lila stood, waving graciously, her designer gown catching every glint of light as the photographer captured the moment, over and over again. I waited. Surely now he'd say it, something about family being everything. But he moved on, straight to thanking the catering staff. That was it. His other daughter, the one who'd followed in his footsteps, who'd dedicated her life to teaching, didn't even warrant a mention. 30 years in education, and he couldn't celebrate the daughter who became a teacher. Beside me, Mrs. Lopez touched my arm softly. "Don't take it to heart," she murmured. "It was predictable." "I know," I said, my voice was steady, too steady. But inside, the memories came flooding back. My father missed my college graduation because Victoria had planned a weekend getaway. He forgot my birthday, 2 years in a row. Every Christmas dinner, every family gathering. Somehow, Lila's promotion always took center stage, while my Teacher of the Year award wasn't even mentioned. "You know," Ethan said suddenly, his voice thoughtful, almost heavy, "I just remembered something." "What?" I asked. "The first time you told your dad about winning that award, you were so excited you called him right away." I froze. "He said he'd call you back, didn't he?" The silence between us answered for me, heavy, sharp, undeniable. "No, he never called back." On stage, my father was telling a funny story about his first day as headmaster. The audience roared with laughter. He was charming, commanding, everything a leader should be, everything a father should be, except one who could love a daughter who chose passion over prestige. Then Ethan's phone buzzed again. He read the message, and for the first time that night, he smiled. "What is it?" I whispered. "Just remembering," he said softly, "why I married a teacher, and why that will always matter more than anything anyone in this room could ever recognize." If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or if your success was never enough, hit subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to people who didn't value you? I read every comment. And remember, you're not alone in this. Now let me tell you what happened when things got worse. Because my father's next announcement changed everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. He returned to the microphone, his face shifting into the expression I'd seen before, the one he wore the night he told me he was marrying Victoria. "It's time for the most important announcement of the evening," he said, his voice commanding instant silence. "As many of you know, the Smith Scholars Foundation has received a generous $6 million commitment from EduCore Tech Corporation." A wave of approving murmurs rippled through the crowd. $6 million was impressive, even to this well-polished audience. "This foundation will continue to fund scholarships and resources for emerging leaders in education," he continued. And then his tone brightened, proud, deliberate. "Tonight, I'm honored to announce who will succeed me on the foundation's board as I retire." I held my breath. This was it. The role he'd promised me 3 years ago, when the foundation was first created. "When I retire, Sophia, you'll carry on the family legacy," he'd once said. "Your classroom experience will be invaluable." "But now, after careful consideration," he said, his voice ringing through the ballroom, "I'm thrilled to announce that Lila Langford will be joining the board as my successor." The words fell heavy. And the world around me simply stopped. The room erupted in applause. Lila rose to her feet, smoothing the red gown that shimmered under the lights, waving like she'd just won an Oscar. Victoria beamed, dabbing the corner of her eyes with the kind of precision that could win awards of its own. I sat frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. 3 years of preparation, 2 years of research on teacher grant programs, dozens of proposals I'd written to fund creative classrooms. Gone. "Lila brings a unique perspective," my father continued. "Her legal expertise and corporate connections will help the foundation grow beyond what we ever imagined." Legal expertise. For a foundation meant to support teachers. Ethan's hand clamped around mine, tight enough to hurt. "That was supposed to be you," he whispered. "I know," I said softly. But it wasn't just about losing the title. This foundation would control how scholarships were distributed to hundreds of teachers across the state. Teachers like me. Teachers Lila had probably never spoken to outside of tonight's photo ops. She couldn't tell the difference between Common Core and state standards. She'd never spent a single day inside a classroom. And furthermore, my father added proudly, Lila will be working closely with our primary sponsor, EduCore Tech Corporation, to ensure their vision aligns perfectly with ours. Their vision, not the vision of educators, not the needs of teachers, but the vision of a corporation. Beside me, Mrs. Lopez gasped. "But you're an actual teacher," she whispered. "You understand what we really need." I did. And that was exactly why I wasn't chosen. Suddenly, Ethan stood up. "Excuse me for a moment," he said. "Where are you going?" I asked quietly. "To make a call." His voice carried a tension I'd never heard before. "This changes everything." He was already on the phone before he reached the hallway, his expression sharp, focused, deliberate. From my seat, I watched Lila accept congratulations at the VIP table. My legacy turned into her stepping stone. The full weight of it hit me as Daniel Brennan, chairman of the foundation's board, rose to speak. He began outlining the responsibilities of the new position. Board members would oversee more than $500,000 each year in teacher scholarships and development grants. They'll determine funding priorities, he said. They'll choose recipients and shape the future of educational support across the state. $500,000 a year. for teachers who needed it most. Teachers like me. And now, that power sat in the hands of someone who'd never spent a single morning in a classroom. I thought of Ms. Rodriguez at my school, who worked weekend shifts at Target just to buy classroom supplies, and of James, the second-grade teacher who started a GoFundMe campaign to fund special education resources, and of my own $200 monthly stipend, money I spent on books, crayons, and science kits. This position could have changed all of that. At the VIP table, Lila was saying something to a donor, her voice carrying across the room. "I've already drafted a proposal," she said. "It focuses on leadership development and administrative advancement." Administrative advancement. Not classroom resources, not teacher retention, not the things that actually mattered to the kids we taught every day. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Trust me, something important is about to happen." I scanned the room, but he was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go? Before I could think, Victoria's voice cut through my thoughts. Perfectly pitched, perfectly public. "Lila has already identified several exciting partnership opportunities with our corporate sponsors," she said proudly. "Real innovation," Lila said from across the room, "not the same old classroom fundraising campaigns." Classroom fundraising campaigns? Is that what she thought our efforts were? 2 years, I whispered to Mrs. Lopez. I spent 2 years researching teacher burnout, developing retention strategies, building mentorship programs. She nodded gently. "We know, Sophia. Everyone here knows what you've done for this community." A pause. "But knowing doesn't matter. Not in this room. Not where success is measured by billable hours and corporate connections." On stage, my father returned to the microphone. "Jessica will bring a fresh perspective to educational funding," he said confidently. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what insiders might miss." An outsider. After 30 years in education, he truly believed an outsider could serve teachers better than someone who had lived it. My phone lit up again, another message from Ethan. "Watch Daniel Brennan, this is important." I glanced toward the VIP table. Daniel was staring at his phone. Daniel Brennan's expression shifted, from polite interest to sharp focus. He scanned the room, searching for someone. "Before we continue," Daniel said suddenly, rising from his seat, "I'd like to clarify something about our corporate sponsor." The room fell silent. "This isn't part of the scheduled program," he added. Victoria looked confused. Lila's practiced smile faltered just slightly. And somewhere in the crowd, I knew Ethan was orchestrating something I didn't yet understand. I couldn't sit there any longer, not while 200 people watched my erasure in real time. My legs moved before my mind could stop them, carrying me toward the VIP table with a resolve I didn't know I had. "Dad," I said, voice steady, "we need to talk." The table went still. 7 faces turned toward me, including Lila's, her polite smile tightening at the edges. "Not now, Sophia," my father said in that same authoritative tone he once used on disobedient students. But I didn't flinch. "No, it can't wait," I said calmly. "You're making a scene," Victoria's voice cut in, cold, wrapped in silk. "Am I?" I asked, still composed, "because I thought we were here to celebrate education tonight." My voice stayed level, professional, the same tone I used with difficult parents at school. "That position was promised to me 3 years ago," I said quietly. "Circumstances change," my father replied, still refusing to look me in the eye. "What circumstances?" I asked. "My teaching award? My master's degree? A decade of classroom experience?" Lila laughed softly, the sound sharp, brittle, like glass breaking. "Oh, Sophia," she said, "a multi-million-dollar foundation requires more than good intentions." "You're right," I said. "It requires understanding what teachers actually need." "That's why we needed someone with real-world experience," Victoria interjected smoothly. Real-world experience. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them, sharper than I intended. "I teach 28 8-year-olds every single day. I buy supplies with my own money. I work 60 hours a week to make $40,000 a year. How much more real-world can it get?" A murmur spread. People at nearby tables were turning to watch. Someone even lifted their phone, recording. "This is embarrassing," my father hissed under his breath. "You need to leave, now." "Embarrassing?" I said, stepping back. "What's embarrassing is giving a seat on an education board to someone who's never set foot in a classroom." "Security," Victoria called out sharply, raising a manicured hand. 2 uniformed guards began moving toward us. A photographer's flash went off, again and again. And in that moment, I realized this was it. The scene that would define me. The crazy daughter who ruined her father's retirement gala. Fine, I said, my voice steady. I'll go. But I turned to face the crowd. Before I do, everyone here should know. Dr. Gregory Smith just chose connections over compassion, networking over knowledge. His legacy isn't education, it's opportunism. Get out, Dad shouted, his face flushed, the last shred of composure finally breaking. You're no longer welcome here. Those words hit harder than any slap ever could. No longer welcome, at my own father's retirement. As the security guards approached, a calm voice sliced through the tension. That won't be necessary. Ethan appeared beside me, steady and composed, his presence cutting through the noise like a lighthouse through fog. He turned to the guards, his tone firm, controlled. We'll leave voluntarily. Then, to my father. But before we go, Dr. Smith, one question. My father glared at him. What? Do you know who your primary sponsor really is? He scoffed. Of course, the CEO of Educor Tech Corporation, some tech executive. What about him? Ethan's smile was quiet, measured but impossible to ignore. That would be me. The words hung in the air, heavy, deliberate. Every conversation in the ballroom stopped. Even the music seemed to fade. Shall we, Sophia? He asked softly. There was something in his tone, something that made 200 people hold their breath. The security guard stepped aside as we walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like waves. I could hear the whispers. Is that his daughter? Someone raised their phone. Another started recording. The flashes followed us out like fireworks. Not of celebration, but of revelation. You're embarrassing yourself, Victoria shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is what happens when people can't accept their limitations. I stopped, turned back. The room fell silent. My limitations? I repeated. Lila rose from her seat, her courtroom confidence dripping from every word. Some people are born for greatness, she said smoothly. Others are meant for simpler things. There's no shame in being ordinary, Sophia. Ordinary. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Teaching is a noble profession, Victoria said sweetly, her tone soaked in false sympathy. But honestly, anyone can teach elementary school. It takes real talent to succeed in law or business. Anyone can teach. I thought of Caleb, the boy with dyslexia who finally learned to love reading. Of Sarah, who overcame selective mutism in my classroom. Of the 17-hour days, the differentiated lesson plans, the psychology courses, the endless patience it takes to shape a child's mind. You're right, I said softly. Anyone can stand in front of a classroom. Not everyone can teach. There's a difference. My father stood abruptly, his face flushed with fury. Security, escort her out, now! But before the guards could move, Daniel Brennan rose from his seat. Maybe, he said evenly, we should all stay right where we are. Daniel, this is a family matter, my father snapped. Family matter, public humiliation, now a family affair. The security guards stepped closer. One reached for my elbow. Ma'am, we need you to step outside. Don't touch my wife. Ethan's voice cut through the air. The guard instantly stepped back. Or what? My father challenged, his tone sharp. You'll both leave? Please, do us all a favor. The only announcement that matters tonight, he added coldly, is Lila's. Ethan pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. You're right, Dr. Smith, he said evenly. Lila's announcement is important. In fact, it's about to become important to quite a few people. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see, Ethan said, slipping his phone into his pocket. Daniel, you might want to check your email. Daniel Brennan frowned, pulling out his phone. Seconds later, his eyes widened. What? What is this? My father's voice rose. What's going on? It's already started, Ethan said calmly. Nothing happens tonight that isn't already in motion. He turned to me. Come on, Sophia. We don't have to stay to watch it unfold. We started toward the ballroom doors, the crowd whispering, flashing phones raised like spotlights. Then I heard Daniel's voice, urgent now. Mr. Smith, Robert, we need to talk now. The last thing I saw before reaching the door was my father's face, confused, crumbling, as Daniel showed him something on his phone, and Victoria's perfect smile began to break. We were just steps from the exit when Ethan stopped. Actually, he said quietly, I've changed my mind. Ethan turned back toward the ballroom, his stride steady, deliberate. I'd never seen him like this. Normally, my husband was the quiet one, supportive, warm, the man behind the curtain. But something had shifted. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I whispered. "What I should have done the moment they changed your seat," he said. He climbed the stage stairs 2 at a time, the room falling silent around him. "Excuse me, Dr. Gregory Smith," he said into the microphone, his calm authority cutting through the tension. "Before we go, just one quick question." My father looked as if he might explode. "Get off that stage." "Just one," Ethan repeated. "You mentioned earlier that Educor Tech Corporation committed $6 million to your foundation. Impressive." He paused, just long enough for every head to turn. "How much do you actually know about Educor?" "What kind of question is that?" Victoria snapped. "Security?" But Daniel Brennan raised a hand. "Let him speak. This is relevant, Dr. Smith." Ethan nodded graciously. "Educor specializes in educational technology for underserved schools," he said evenly. "We believe every child deserves access to quality learning, no matter their zip code." His tone was calm, measured, but the room could feel it. Something monumental was coming. And I remembered his text. "Trust me. Something important is about to happen." "The company's history is actually quite fascinating," Ethan continued, his tone calm, conversational. Too calm. "It was founded 5 years ago by a man who watched his mother struggle as a public school teacher. She spent her own money on supplies, worked weekends without pay, and never received the recognition she deserved." A ripple of unease moved through the ballroom. Even the servers stopped walking. "That founder made himself a promise," Ethan went on, "that if he ever had the means, he would support teachers the right way, not with empty words or PR campaigns, but with real resources." He turned, meeting Dr. Gregory Smith's eyes. "That founder believed teachers like Sophia, the ones who stay late to tutor struggling kids, who spend their summers building creative lessons, who see potential where others see problems, deserve more than a seat in the back of the room." My father's voice cracked for the first time that night. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying," Ethan said evenly, "that Educor's funding comes with conditions, something we call values alignment. We're very specific about who manages our grants." Daniel Brennan was typing fast now, his face tightening with concern. "Ethan," I whispered, as everything suddenly clicked. The late-night calls, the education journals, how he always knew what my classroom needed. "The contract terms," Ethan said evenly, "are very clear about the kind of leadership Educor expects." "Strange you never read them closely, Dr. Smith." My father's face drained of color. "You can't—" Ethan smiled softly. "Interesting assumption." Daniel stepped forward. "Gregory, we need to talk, now." "What contract?" Victoria demanded. Ethan read calmly from his phone. Section 7.3, administrators must prioritize teachers with real classroom experience. Section 7.4, board seats should reflect educational diversity, favoring active educators. "Should I keep going?" Ethan asked. Lila gave a nervous laugh. "This is ridiculous. You can't be serious." "I'm not implying anything," Ethan said softly. "I'm simply reading a binding legal document, one Dr. Gregory Smith signed 6 weeks ago." My father snatched Daniel's copy of the contract, flipping through it frantically as the color drained from his face. "Furthermore," Ethan continued, "Educor Tech reserves the right to withdraw funding if these conditions aren't met. And clearly, they aren't." "You set us up," Victoria hissed. "No," Ethan replied evenly. "We invested $6 million, with very clear terms. You saw the money and assumed the details didn't matter." That's when I noticed it. The Educor logo projected on the screen behind the stage. The stylized apple with a graduation cap. The same one glowing on Ethan's laptop all those nights. How had I missed it? "This is a trap," Lila shouted, rising to her feet. "Not a trap," Ethan said calmly. "It's called contract law." "I trust your legal expertise," Ethan said smoothly. "Then you'll appreciate Section 12.1. Any public announcement of board appointments without sponsor approval constitutes a breach of contract." A wave of murmurs rippled through the ballroom. Phones lifted, recording the unprecedented reversal. Daniel Brennan cleared his throat. "Dr. Smith, as board chairman, did you review this contract with counsel before signing it?" Victoria jumped in. "Lila reviewed it." Every eye turned to Lila, who suddenly looked less like a senior partner and more like a deer caught in headlights. I skimmed it, she stammered. It looked standard. Skimmed? Daniel's tone could have frozen glass. A $6 million contract, and you skimmed it? Ethan stepped back from the mic, voice calm. Mr. Brennan, I believe you'll need to make some leadership decisions for the foundation. We'll await your response. He turned toward me as the room erupted. Daniel Brennan was already calling an emergency board meeting. Victoria shouted at Lila. My father stood frozen, staring at the contract as if he could will it to disappear. And behind it all, the Educor Tech logo glowed brighter. A silent reminder of who truly held the power now. Are you still following my story? If you find this story interesting, please like this video to encourage us. And if you're wondering what Ethan is about to reveal next, trust me, you won't want to miss it. Have you ever had someone stand up for you when you couldn't stand up for yourself? That moment when love proves you were never invisible? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Now everything was about to change. The truth was finally out. Victoria's calm shattered. She snatched the microphone, her voice sharp with panic. "This is manipulation," she screamed. "This man," she pointed at Ethan, "deceived everyone. He's been hiding who he really is. And Sophia, she must have planned this whole thing." "Planned what?" I managed to ask. "To humiliate us. To turn your father's retirement into a spectacle," she hissed. "You've always been an embarrassment. A school teacher making $40,000 a year, driving a 10-year-old Honda to Target." Her words echoed through the ballroom, each one landing like a slap. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. "You know what it's like, Sophia?" Victoria sneered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Jessica and I have to explain you at the country club events." The entire room froze. A collective gasp spread through the crowd. Forks stopped mid-air. Whispers rippled like a current. Someone near the back murmured. She actually said that out loud. Victoria turned sharply to Ethan. "And what about you? Pretending to be some nobody when you're what, exactly?" Ethan's tone stayed calm, steady. A man proud of his wife. A man who believes shaping young minds matters more than closing corporate deals. Lila snatched the microphone from her mother, her hands trembling. "This doesn't change anything," she said, her voice too high. "I have the qualifications. I have the connections." I stepped closer, my voice clear and steady. "You have no classroom experience. Name one educational theory, one teaching strategy, one method for students with learning disabilities." Silence. Dozens of faces turned toward her, some wide-eyed, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The soft hum of camera phones filled the air. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Experience doesn't matter when you have talent," Lila snapped, her mask cracking. "Some of us are born to lead, others are just teachers." The word hung in the air like smoke. Just teachers. At nearby tables, several educators lowered their eyes, a few shaking their heads, others whispering under their breath. The humiliation wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. Finally, Dr. Gregory Smith stood, his voice tight. "Sophia has always lacked ambition. I tried to push her toward law school, business, something respectable. But she chose this." Gasps again, sharper this time. 10 years of dedication, compassion, and purpose, reduced to a single word: disappointment. "You know what?" I said, my voice echoing through the silent ballroom. "Yes, I did choose this. I chose to wake up every morning and make a difference. To be the person children turn to when the world feels too heavy. I chose meaning over money." "How noble!" Victoria scoffed, her laugh sharp as glass. "And how convenient that your husband's money lets you play teacher without worrying about bills." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Around us, 200 guests watched, broken my family and phones raised to capture every word. "My wife," Ethan said softly, "has never taken a single dollar from Educor Tech. She doesn't even know the full extent of what I do." He paused, his calm composure returning like a tide. "But maybe it's time everyone here knows who actually deserves respect in this room." Then he turned, slowly, deliberately, and walked toward the stage with purpose. This time, no one tried to stop him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, standing at the podium with a quiet confidence I had only ever seen in our most private moments. When he spoke about changing education, about making a difference that actually mattered. The ballroom fell silent. "My name is Ethan Smith," he said, his voice steady. "Yes, I took my wife's last name when we got married. She doesn't know this, but I did it to honor the only Smith who truly understands what education means." I froze. He had never told me why. 5 years ago, Ethan continued, I watched my wife come home in tears after spending her entire paycheck on textbooks for her students. That same night, she stayed up until 3 a.m. creating personalized lesson plans for every single child in her class. His voice carried through the hall, clear and resonant, every word deliberate. That was the night I decided to build something that would actually support teachers like her. He paused, scanning the crowd, every face, every camera, every breathless second hanging in the air. "Every lawyer, every leader, every success story in this room," Ethan said, started with one person, a teacher. A hush spread through the ballroom. Someone who saw potential in us, who stayed after class to help us understand, who believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves. Daniel Brennan nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "But somewhere along the way," Ethan continued softly, "we forgot them, didn't we? We achieved success, and suddenly those teachers became an embarrassment. Not glamorous enough for our galas, not worthy of our VIP tables." "This is grandstanding," Victoria protested weakly. "No," Ethan said, steady but firm. "This is truth." He looked out across the silent room. "Sophia Smith has changed more lives in a single year of teaching than most of us will in our entire careers. Her students still write to her years later. Their parents credit her for changing their children's futures. And yet tonight, she wasn't good enough for her own family's table." He reached for his phone and projected something onto the massive screen behind him. The image filled the screen. A classroom covered in children's artwork, handwritten thank you letters, certificates taped proudly to painted walls. "This," Ethan said, his voice ringing through the hall, "is what success really looks like. This is what actually matters." His tone grew stronger. "And if Dr. Gregory Smith can't see that, if he values networking over knowledge, status over purpose, then he doesn't deserve what EduCore Tech provides." "You can't withdraw funding for personal reasons," Lila blurted, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. Ethan smiled, calm, precise. "I'm not withdrawing for personal reasons. I'm withdrawing for misaligned values. Section 3.2 of the contract. The sponsor reserves the right to redirect funds if the recipient fails to demonstrate a commitment to supporting classroom educators." "Redirect?" Daniel Brennan asked sharply. "Redirect where?" Ethan looked straight at me. For the first time that night, his professional composure gave way, revealing only pride, love, and conviction. "To someone who truly deserves it," he said quietly. Then he turned back to the microphone. "Allow me to reintroduce myself," he said, his voice steady, commanding. "My name is Ethan Cole Smith, founder and CEO of EduCore Tech Corporation." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, cheers, chairs scraping the floor as people stood to get a better look. The revelation hit like thunder. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing the moment my father's empire crumbled. "This can't be happening," Victoria stammered, her knuckles white against the edge of the table. "You're nobody. You drive a Honda Civic. You shop at Costco." "So do I," Ethan replied calmly, "because I'd rather invest in classrooms than status symbols. I know, that's a radical concept." My father sank into his chair, his face ashen. "You lied to us, all these years." "I never lied," Ethan said quietly. "You just never asked. You assumed that a quiet man who married a schoolteacher couldn't possibly be successful. Your own prejudice blinded you." Lila's phone rang. She answered automatically, then froze. I understand, yes, sir." She hung up, her face pale. "That was partner Richardson," she whispered. "Foster and Associates wants to discuss reputational risk." "What?" Victoria screamed. "Tonight's live stream hit 50,000 views," someone near the back called out. "It's trending." Daniel Brennan stepped forward. "Dr. Smith, Mr. Cole, as chairman, I need to know your intentions for the foundation. Ethan's gaze never left my father. Educor Tech Corporation, he said clearly, is hereby withdrawing all funding from the Smith Education Foundation, effective immediately. The words landed like thunder. The empire collapsed in silence. My father roared, his voice shaking the air. "We have a contract!" "Yes," Ethan replied evenly. "One you breached the moment you announced Lila's appointment without sponsor approval. Your attorney should have known that." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Oh wait, she was your attorney." A ripple of gasps swept through the crowd. The irony cut deeper than any insult could. "Your own negligence," Ethan said calmly, "just triggered my exit clause." He straightened, his voice growing stronger. "Furthermore, I'm establishing the Sophia Smith Excellence in Teaching Foundation, $5 million, managed by real educators, for real educators." From the back of the room, the teachers at table 12 began to clap. Hesitantly at first, then louder. Table 11 joined in, then another, and another. Within seconds, half the ballroom was on its feet. Every teacher, every quiet professional who finally saw justice unfold before them. Daniel Brennan stepped forward, his voice firm yet respectful. "Mr. Cole, I'd be honored to serve as chairman of your new foundation. We need someone with your integrity." He looked between Ethan and my father, his decision clear. "I accept." "This is theft!" Victoria screamed. "We'll sue you!" "Please do," Ethan replied calmly. "I'm sure the publicity will be wonderful for everyone involved. A principal's wife calls teachers an embarrassment. It'll sound great in the headlines." My father rose slowly, his dignity collapsing, his legacy shattered in minutes. "Sophia," he whispered, "you've ruined everything." But I didn't look at him anymore. My eyes were on Ethan, the man who had just revealed himself as my fiercest protector, my quietest champion. I never thought that one day my name would be at the top of a national education fund. But what moved me most was not the sign or the funding numbers, but the eyes of the teachers, who used to have to save their salaries to buy chalk, now standing up like silent heroes. After that night, everything changed so fast that I couldn't even breathe. The news spread like wildfire. The video of Victoria Langford calling teachers a disgrace reached more than 3 million views in just 48 hours. The press called it "The Night Education Fought Back." A hashtag began to spread across platforms. "Had teachers deserve respect?" People shared their stories. The teacher who was fired for daring to protest an unfair system. The single mother who worked double hours just to buy teaching equipment for her child's class. The teacher who used all her savings to send her students to national exams. For once, they weren't laughed at, they were applauded. 3 days later, the school board announced that Mr. Gregory Smith would retire early, effective immediately. The word "voluntary" in the announcement only elicited bitter laughter from the crowd. Online, he was called the principal who lost $6 million to arrogance. My father, the man who taught me how to spell respect, was now a living example of the opposite. Victoria Langford disappeared from town, moving with Lila Langford to Connecticut. The lawyer daughter who walked in high heels and said, "Some are born to lead, others are born to teach," now runs an Instagram account called @BalanceByLila, dedicated to re-energizing after a career crisis. Not a single line mentioned Harvard Law. Not a single word mentioned Henderson and Comey Law Group. Just forced smiles and empty quotes. I don't gloat. I just feel sad for them. Because perhaps, if they had understood the true value of kindness, they wouldn't have lost everything like that. Meanwhile, the Sophia Smith Empowerment and Education Foundation grew faster than anyone could have predicted. In the first week, more than 50 businesses sent in sponsorship requests. Not for the fame, but because they wanted their names to be associated with respect. We had to hire additional staff just to process the applications. 3 months later, the foundation had awarded 127 scholarships, supported supplies for 89 classrooms, and funded mental health care for more than 200 teachers. Every thank you letter, every repainted classroom photo, every laugh from a child in a video sent back, it brought me to tears. But I still taught, still went to school at 7 a.m., graded papers, wiped the board, guided students to write each letter. A reporter asked me, "Sophia, why are you still teaching when you run a multi-million-dollar foundation?" I laughed. Because this fund was created to serve teachers. How could I understand them if I weren't one of them? Ethan and I hadn't changed much. We still lived in the same two-bedroom apartment, still drove the same Honda Civic, still ate spaghetti and cheap wine every Sunday. The only thing that had changed was the light in our eyes, the light of two people who knew they were on the right side. One morning, I discovered two small lines on the pregnancy test. Ethan smiled, touching my belly. "A teacher's child," he said. "We'll teach him that different is not inferior." I nodded. Every child can change the world. Teachers just help them see it. 6 months after the ball, my father called. His voice was hoarse, weak, and heavy with breaths. "Sophia, we need to talk." "We're talking," I said. "No, in person. I need to apologize." I was silent. Do I need forgiveness, or do I need it to save my reputation? The silence was so long I could hear the clock ticking. "You were wrong," he said finally. "I was too harsh. I shouldn't have given that seat to Lila Langford. I shouldn't have removed you from the VIP table." I closed my eyes. "Thank you for saying that. But what I need is not an apology, but change. You've lost everything, Sophia. Your reputation, your marriage, your career." "I didn't do that, Dad," I said softly. "I just stopped protecting you from your own consequences. I'm your daughter." "I know. And that still matters, at least to me. But was I ever really your daughter when you forgot my birthday? When you didn't show up for my teacher's honors? When you introduced Lila Langford as the greatest pride of my life?" He was silent. Then he whispered wearily, "What do you want from me?" "All you need are boundaries, 6 months of family therapy, a public apology, and a genuine effort to understand why what I did was wrong, not just because of the consequences, but because of the harm." "That's absurd." "Yes, you can still choose not to do it, just like every time." I hung up, not angry, not gloating, just relieved. Because in the end, I chose peace over approval. A year later, at table 12 in the same ballroom where it all began, we held our first fundraiser. Daniel Brennan, 5 veteran teachers, 2 parents, and me. No lawyers who hadn't taught, no CEOs who hadn't volunteered in a classroom. Just people who understood that teaching is not lesser work. It's the foundation of everything. Ms. Chen, who had sat in the back that day, smiled. From the classroom to the boardroom, that's the real journey. I never heard from my father again. He didn't meet any of the conditions. Victoria Langford sent several lengthy emails about public misunderstanding, all of which landed in spam. Lila lived hidden among the self-love posts. I have 28 8-year-olds who believe I'm a miracle, a husband who sees my true worth, and a baby on the way. Now, looking back, I realized the lesson that night wasn't about winning. It wasn't about revenge. It was about awareness, that your worth doesn't depend on who else sees it. I spent 35 years trying to get my father's approval. But the truth is, teaching is no different than law, no different than business. They're different paths, not different values. The hardest boundary I ever drew wasn't with my father, but with myself. Boundaries against doubt, self-doubt, and the belief that meaning is less than success. Ethan didn't save me. He just helped me see what was always there, that my work mattered, that my choices mattered, and that the children I taught every day were evidence of true greatness. Last week, a former student of mine came to visit. "She's a teacher now. Miss Sophia," she said, "you taught me that teaching is a superpower." I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. "You're right, every teacher has a superpower. They shape minds, build futures, catch kids when they fall, and teach them to fly." My dad and I haven't spoken in 8 months. We may never be able to reconcile. But I've learned that family isn't about blood. Family is about those who see your worth, even when you forget yourself. It's the husband who quietly builds an empire in your honor. It's the students who write thank you notes 10 years later. It's the community that stands up and applauds when you're overlooked. And if you're listening, if you've ever been undervalued, left out of your own family's dinner table, remember this. Just because others don't see your value doesn't make it disappear. Set your boundaries with love, but hold them with iron. You deserve respect, not forgiveness. You deserve appreciation, not comparison. You deserve to be celebrated for the path you've chosen, especially when that path serves others. And sometimes, the universe will send you an Ethan, someone who sees your value before the world does. But even if it doesn't, even if you're sitting at table 12, far from the spotlight of the VIP table, remember, your value is never based on where you sit. It never has been, and it never will be. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonates with you, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me, have you ever had to choose between family approval and self-respect? And if so, what did you choose? Leave it in the comments and I'll read it all. Hopefully my story helps you remember that dignity isn't quiet, it echoes, and sometimes dignity is the loudest revenge.